So, all right, thank you so much. Tell me your full name so I can pronounce it properly.
Sure. William Wechsler. It's pronounced like there's an X in the middle of it. Wechsler.
Wechsler. Okay. Thank you so much, William, for joining me. I read through the article you wrote on counterterrorism in Afghanistan. So tell us about the future of counterterrorism mission in Afghanistan or in the region.
Sure. Counterterrorism is the sole vital national security interest that the United States has in Afghanistan. We have a lot of other interests. We have humanitarian interests, but terrorism was the reason why we went in the first place. And alas, the terrorist groups that are in Afghanistan have not disappeared. And so these interests will remain going forward. There are really only three different scenarios that one can imagine. The first is that because we know that Al-Qaeda is coming back, we know the Islamic State is there. Salafi jihadist groups will adopt different names but have the same ideology. So we know they're going to come back. So the first scenario is that they choose not to do external attacks, including attacks on Americans. We're going to have that debate. We always have that debate. I think the burden of proof is on people who say that they are not going to conduct those attacks because they have almost a perfect record of conducting those attacks when they have a physical sanctuary. The second scenario is that Al-Qaeda will want to do those attacks, but the Taliban will stop them. There are some people in the United States that hold out hope for that. They point to, as the Trump administration did, that the Taliban was willing to sign a piece of paper that said that they would disassociate themselves from Al-Qaeda. I didn't believe it then. I don't believe it now. The Taliban is very much intricately related with Al-Qaeda in lots of different operational and personal ways. It might make sense from our perspective for the Taliban to prevent Al-Qaeda from attacking Americans, but I don't know that that it makes sense from the Taliban's perspective. And so I think it'd be a very, very high risk to depend on that. So the third option is that we're going to have terrorist plots to attack Americans from Afghanistan. So the question there is, what do we do about it? What President Biden is talking about is over-the-horizon counterterrorism capabilities. We can do that. We've done that elsewhere. There's a couple of problems, though. The first is, by definition, your capability set, your effectiveness goes down, and the risks go up. The other key question is, how far away is that horizon? And in some other places where we do such activities, the horizon is really not that far away. It might just be a boat offshore. It might be the next country over. In Afghanistan, that horizon is going to be quite a long way away unless anything changes remarkably, which limits, again, our ability to do these kinds of operations. How we were previously planning to mitigate against these risks is by working with local partners, is by working with the Afghan commandos, because the Afghan government would, although challenged across the countryside, would still hold Kabul. And so the Afghan intelligence services would help us identify such threats. The Afghan commandos would help deal with such threats. That was, in the context of the announced withdrawal, the plan in order to deal with counterterrorism. Unfortunately, those plans are all gone right now. So this terrorism problem is going to be a much more significant challenge for the U.S. going forward.
I think the big part of the counterterrorism mission has always been access to intelligence, how they collect intelligence from the region. When they don't have that primary access and they're not in Afghanistan, what about risk reduction? What kind of possibilities are there for them to have a risk reduction plan or goal so they can stop such maybe any possible terrorist attack from Afghanistan against the West or US?
It becomes a much more challenging covert operations world when you're not working with a host nation partner, and we're certainly not going to be working with the Taliban government for these intelligence needs. One of the questions is the various people that used to work on these matters with the United States. Some of them are trying to get out of the country right now. We should try to get as many out of the country as we possibly can. Some, either by choice or by necessity, will stay in the country. Hopefully, we can still have communications with them and talk with them. Of course, they will be hunted down by the Taliban, so that will be a continuous challenge. And then comes the normal signals intelligence and satellite pictures and overflights and all the things that we do to try to do it. It's just the level of information, the level of confidence that we have in that information in the current circumstance is going to be much less than it would be otherwise. And that's just the reality that we're going to have to face.
So Russia and China are involved more in Afghanistan, especially China step in. They want to help with the construction. So obviously they have their own intelligence in Afghanistan. How US will deal with terrorism in the region, let's say around Afghanistan, location close to Pakistan and the border area. So how US will be continuing its over the horizon counterterrorism mission?
Yeah, Russia and China are pointedly not withdrawing their embassies after the Taliban takeover of Kabul. The Taliban leadership went to Beijing not long ago and was received very positively there, and China made clear that they would be recognizing a Taliban government even if they took it by force. So these countries will be there. Pakistan will be involved as well. None of them have a desire for Al Qaeda to start again their external attacks. All of them have their own counterterrorism challenges that they're looking to face. So there are likely to be opportunities for information exchange, intelligence sharing, cooperation on the margins with these countries. But make no mistake, one of the big challenges that we face is 20 years ago, when the Taliban held Kabul and led the country. Their primary challenge that they had before 9/11 was from the Northern Alliance, which was backed by India, Russia, and Iran. Now, 20 years later, both Russia and Iran have found lots of opportunities to come to a different set of relationships with the Taliban. And so that's problematic in the first place.
So what do you recommend for Biden administration if they ask you for a better counterterrorism mission over the horizon for Afghanistan and the region?
Well, we're going to have to, the number of platforms, the number of assets that we're going to have in the region are sadly going to have to go up in order for us to collect the information that we need unilaterally. We're also going to want to cooperate, as I mentioned, with countries that fundamentally, at some basis, share our concerns about counterterrorism, and make sure that that we're using those liaison relationships to understand what we need to do. We're going to need to have the capability through our military assets to take unilateral action when we need to do so. And we're going to need to work with the power brokers inside of Afghanistan to see if they can help us on these issues. One of the, if not the most fundamental problem with the U.S. approach to Afghanistan for the last 20 years is that we were trying to create something that had never before existed, which was a centralized government in Kabul that had the only source of legitimate power throughout the entire country. It's an ahistorical view of Afghanistan. It's always been a level of negotiation between the center and power brokers, in the region, and the Taliban will confront that same problem. again. And so if they're negotiating with different actors in the region, then maybe we can, in the country, then maybe we can negotiate with some of those actors in the country, and maybe we'll find that there are some commonalities in our counterterrorism objectives with those actors, even if there's not with the Taliban in Kabul.